Hi everybody, I'm Carmen Foreman. I am the state politics reporter here at the Oklahoman, and today I'm joined by Andy Moore. He's the executive director of a group called Let's Fix This, but he's also leading a new initiative called People Not Politicians, and he's going to tell us a little bit more about that today.
Yeah, thanks Carmen, thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem, welcome. So what exactly is People Not Politicians? And what did you all file yesterday that you were trying to get on the state ballot for next year?
So People Not Politicians is a coalition of concerned Oklahomans who want to end gerrymandering in Oklahoma. And to do that, we filed a ballot petition to get a state question on the ballot that would end gerrymandering by creating an independent redistricting commission.
Okay, so what is gerrymandering? I think most people have heard the term, but maybe aren't familiar with specifically what it means?
Sure. So gerrymandering is the process by which politicians fiddle with district lines in a way to get themselves reelected. It's kind of a way for them, a little trick they can pull on us to avoid being as accountable to the voters as they might otherwise be.
Gotcha. And do you think that's happening here in Oklahoma? Has it happened here in Oklahoma in the past?
Yeah, I think anyone who looks at our maps of our state house and Senate districts can tell that some of these maps just don't make sense. There's, as an example, there's a district in Oklahoma City that includes Lake Hefner, part of Lake Overholser, and then all the way back over to Shepherd Mall. And anyone who's familiar with this part of the city knows that those are three very different areas.
Yeah.
Another example is a map for House District 41 that starts in Yukon and goes all the way up to Enid and then around Enid almost to the border with Kansas. So including very different communities that might not always have a whole lot in common.
Gotcha. Okay. So tell me a little bit about what our redistricting process looks like now and what you all want it to look like if this state question, or proposed state question, maybe I should say right now, passes.
Sure. So the current process is that legislators can go and draw districts however they want. They quite literally go into a back room with whoever they want in the room with whatever data. They draw the districts, and so long as they pass it and the governor signs it, those districts are the law. The public has no idea how much it cost or who's in the room or why they made those decisions. The new process that we're proposing is the complete opposite of that. The new process would be totally open and transparent. It would be subject to the Open Records Act, the Open Meeting Act. All the data would be made public, and the commission itself would be comprised of 9 regular Oklahomans who are willing to serve their state and to be the ones to draw this commission so that it's not politicians picking their own voters.
Mm-hmm. Worth noting that the House and the Senate the House draws House maps, the Senate draws Senate maps, and then they both sort of draw congressional maps. And they have already sort of got that process rolling. They've appointed, or they will appoint bipartisan committees for each chamber to sort of tackle redistricting. So how, if this state question were to pass, if you are to get the number of signatures and all that stuff, how does one become a commissioner on, it's the Citizens Independent Redistricting Committee, correct?
Yeah, so the process is pretty simple. Once we win, right, we're on the ballot, then it starts the process where they will open up an application period for interested parties to apply, and then their applications are reviewed and they go through a selection process where ultimately let's say the top 20 Republicans, top 20 Democrats, and top 20 independents or otherwise unaffiliated voters that are applicants would kind of go into 3 buckets, and a panel of retired judges who are not involved in politics at all would kind of draw names out of a hat to pick the commission itself.
And just to be clear, there's some language in what you turned into the Secretary of State's office that sort of makes sure that all 9 of these commissioners aren't coming from Oklahoma City or Tulsa. You're trying to take into account diversity and some other factors when picking these commissioners.
Yeah, that's correct. When the panel of judges are selecting those 20 in each of those categories, they are instructed to do so in a way that reflects what Oklahoma really looks like. There have to be at least someone from every congressional district. There have to be people that reflect our state's like rich diversity in terms of race and ethnicity, gender, veteran status, kind of all the usual factors for diversity that we think about.
Okay. Now, so folks in the House and Senate had some critiques of this plan yesterday, and they said that it sounds, convoluted, sort of complicated. How are you going to explain all of this to voters?
Sure, and I totally get that. I will say that the only people who are opposed to this idea are people who benefit from the current system, and so we kind of expect that they may be the ones that would not like it. Our plan to explain it is I'm going to meet with as many people as I can, and so are members of our team. We will be announcing later this week a series of 10 town hall meetings we're going to host around the state to kind of get things started. And then we're really looking for a really broad, committed team of volunteers to help us get the word out and tell as many Oklahomans as we can that this is the change that we need to make our democracy better.
Gotcha. And I did want you to sort of comment on some of the statements that I got from the statement I got from the House Speaker and Senate Pro Tem. I believe the House Speaker, Charles McCall, he's a Republican from Atoka. He said this is the initiative petition that you filed is a solution in search of a problem in a state like Oklahoma that has not had problems with or successful lawsuits over our redistricting process. And then Senate Pro Tem Greg Treat, a Republican from Oklahoma City, took it a step further and said, this is a redistricting coup, not an attempt at fair maps. This is a power play by out-of-state liberals in an attempt to force an agenda on Oklahomans. How would you respond to that?
Sure. Well, I'm happy to respond to each of those in kind. First, Speaker McCall's statement, there certainly have been lawsuits. The fact they haven't been successful doesn't mean that they weren't warranted, I think. And to say that there isn't a problem with gerrymandering from someone who is currently in office, again, this just supports what I said earlier, that the only people who are opposed to our idea are people who benefit from the current system. So I'm not surprised by that. And for Senator Treat's statement, I think using the term coup for this is a bit of an overstatement. This is a totally legitimate constitutional process that is provided to Oklahoma citizens in our state constitution for this very reason. And I do reside in Oklahoma. There's no out-of-state liberals involved.
Gotcha. So it's just local fundraising, out-of-state money?
Right. This is a coalition of Oklahomans from across the state. I mean, when we filed, it was me, Jan Largent, who's the state president for the League of Women Voters, and we have a teacher from Tulsa that was also involved, and we've already got a broad coalition kind of spanning out across the state. This is a solution for Oklahomans and by Oklahomans, and we really need everybody, all Oklahomans, to get involved.
I will circle back to that about how people can get involved. But first, I am curious, do you happen to know how many other states have an independent redistricting commission?
Yeah.
I know more and more states are looking at ways to sort of make their redistricting process less partisan.
Yeah. So there are, I think, 8 states that have an actually independent commission, and then another half dozen states that have some combination of a system that is maybe not a commission by itself, but not a legislatively appointed system like Oklahoma has. And so they do vary based on how they're formed. Ours would be one of, if not the first truly independent commission that is entirely independent from the legislative and the executive branch.
Interesting. Why do it different from some of the other options you've seen?
Sure. Well, we in kind of writing our policy, we talk to people from other states to find out what's working, what's not, and how they arrived at the system they have. In many states, they had to do some kind of compromise in order to get it on the ballot or to get it through the legislature. And that, I get that. Ours is truly just coming from the people. And so we were able to write it with input from those states. We talked to the Brennan Center for Justice, who is maybe the kind of foremost nationwide expert on redistricting, and looked for how to structure this in a way that is fair, that is transparent, and that rests the power with the people, not with politicians.
Gotcha. Okay, so you turned in an initiative petition with the Secretary of State's office yesterday. What happens now, and how many signatures do you need to get this on the ballot?
Sure. So the first step is we have to wait a little bit. There's a 10-day waiting period for people to file a challenge. And then after that, we'll either navigate those challenges in the courts or we get to move straight on to signature collection. At whatever point that happens, we will need to collect 178,000 signatures in order to get this on the ballot.
Do you expect there will be a challenge?
It seems like I do. It seems like almost every initiative petition receives some sort of challenge, and so we're ready for that if it happens. But we're also equally ready to start signature collection as soon as they give us the green light.
Gotcha. And then, so if people can't sign the petition yet, but if they want more information, if they're interested in what you're talking about, how do they get more information? How do they get involved?
Sure. The best way is to go to our website, peoplenotpoliticians.org, and on there they can sign up and they can kind of click a box if they want to volunteer, if they want to help with signature collection, they want to host an event. We really need to get out there and kind of drive across the state and talk to as many folks as we can so that we've got that network of volunteers built up when we're ready to start collecting signatures.
Last question for you. Hypothetically, the initiative petition gets the number of signatures, it gets on the ballot, it passes. If this passes in 2020, would we see this independent redistricting commission take over redistricting in 2021?
Yeah, and that's exactly why we're doing it now. There were some bills that were proposed related to this back in session earlier this year. They were not heard even in committee, and so that really kind of hastened our progress on this when it was clear this was not going to happen through the legislature. So if we're successful at passing this, it will likely be sometime in 2020, right? At the latest, maybe in November. And then the redistricting process really starts to kick off the very next month in December as they move towards selecting those commissioners.
Awesome. Well, Andy, thank you for coming in. Last but not least, I'm Carmen Foreman. I'm the state politics reporter for the Oklahoman, and Andy Moore is leading the group People Not Politicians, which is hoping to get an initiative petition on the ballot to have nonpartisan redistricting here in Oklahoma. That's all from us. So thanks for watching.